Hey, very good afternoon, everyone. Afternoon from Malaysia. Good morning to Holland, and good evening to Queensland. Okay, welcome to the MCRN June webinar. My name is Anis Nadia, and I'm from the Center for Research in Language and Linguistics, University Kebangsaan Malaysia. On behalf of Malaysian Corpus Research Network, I would like to thank all of you for joining us today. I would like to welcome our speakers. We have with us today Dr. Peter Crosthwaite from University of Queensland, Australia, and also Professor Dr. Lucas Grabowski from University of Opole, Holland. We're really honored to have both of you with us today. We will now begin the first session. Okay. I would like to welcome our first speaker, Dr. Peter Crosthwaite from University of Queensland. Please allow me to read the background of our very first speaker. Dr. Crosthwaite is a senior lecturer in the School of Languages and Culture at University of Queensland. He was formerly an assistant professor at the Center for Applied English Studies, University of Hong Kong in 2014. His areas of research and supervisory expertise include corpus linguistics and the use of corpora for language learning, known as data-driven learning, as well as computer-assisted language learning, and also English for general and specific academic purposes. He has published over 50 articles to date in leading Q1 journals. He's also the author of the monograph, Learning the Language of Dentistry, Disciplinary Corpora in the Teaching of English for Specific Academic Purposes, as part of Benjamin's Studies in Corpus Linguistics series, as well as the edited volumes Data-Driven Learning for the Next Generation, Corpora and DDL for pre-tertiary learners, and Referring in a Second Language reference to person in a multilingual world. He's also currently serving as associate editor for the Q1 Journal of English for Academic Purposes, featured on the editorial boards of the Q1 journals IRL and System, as well as Applied Corpus Linguistics, a new journal covering the direct applications for corpora to teaching and learning. So we're honored to have you we're lucky to have you today. Thank you for agreeing to become the speaker. Without further ado, let us please welcome our first speaker, Dr. Peter Crosthwaite from University of Queensland, who will be giving a talk on data-driven learning for younger, my slides, CorpusMate.
Yeah, that's okay.
Thank you, Peter. Okay, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much for the wonderful introduction, and thanks for the invite. Very pleased to be invited to present on today's talk, which is going to introduce a new Corpus query platform that's free and available online to anybody who'd like to use it. I'm going to talk a little bit about what data-driven learning is, for those of you who are not familiar with the term, how it works, some of the issues that were faced by myself, and as well as the research field in general when it comes to implementing corpus-based language teaching for younger learners, describe the outcomes of some research that I conducted with secondary school students here in Australia, and that also then informed the design of the CorpusMate platform, which I'll be able to demonstrate for you today. So a little bit about the uses of corpora for education. Chances are that if you're involved in any way in the English language teaching industry, you will have been exposed to elements of corpus linguistics, whether that's in the form of dictionaries, in the form of standardized language tests or test preparation materials, syllabi of popular textbook series, materials for EFL development published by the major academic publishers, application of corpus linguistics you will have been exposed to whether you know it or not. But what we're interested in today is the direct use of corpus by language teachers and language learners. And this is this term has been coined data-driven learning by Tim Johns all the way back in the early 1990s, and that's the term that is still in place today. So what is data-driven learning exactly? We call this the direct hands-on use of corpus linguistics for a variety of educational purposes, whether that's for first language learning, second language learning, learning of disciplinary discourses, learning of different kinds of registers and genres, lots of different applications, combining corpus linguistic techniques with pedagogical activities, whether that's done individually by language learners, whether that's done in a classroom context in collaboration with teachers and peers. At the individual level, the theory suggests that language learners in consultation with corpus data promotes constructivist learning following usage-based principles of second language acquisition, for example, whereby interaction with corpora makes salient some of those frequency-based abstractions of language, allowing learners to learn how language is used and how language is patterned across different contexts and contexts of use. And then when used in classroom context, it's basically a fun way of involving technology into discovering about patterns of language in pairs, small groups, with the whole class, with the teacher supporting the activity, or with the teacher guiding the student into going into the corpus consultation under their own steam. So again, I'm summarizing a lot of like 20 years of DDL research in terms of the theoretical construct of how it works, but this figure provided here in a recent paper by Anne O'Keefe over at Limerick pretty much summarizes the different affordances of language corpora for data-driven learning there. How does it work? Well, typically and originally, exposure to concordances, whether that is in the form of keyword in context view with the target word in the middle with some context to the left or the right, or here, as you could see, in sentence view. Students reading the concordances are then exposed to high frequency recurring targets. We also get information about which words come before the target, which words come after the target, and close reading of these concordances can help us understand how the target word is used, the things that appear, the thing that it appears with, things that it don't appears with, and so on. So lots of research, lots of studies have gone into understanding how reading of concordances promote language learning. But aside from simple concordances, more recent and powerful corpus tools are available that allow us to automatically extract some of the patterning that are underlying our corpus data, whether this in terms of frequency list, n-grams, or so-called, 3-word, 4-word combinations, part of speech-based searches, queries with part of speech tag corpora, the type that you can see here taken from the Lingual platform, and even more modern corpus tools, discourse analysis tools, are now allowing us to see more visual approaches, graphical approaches to understanding language data, how things fit together in terms of their frequency and collocation in a way that might be more comfortable for language learners who may find reading concordances overwhelming, or finding the concordance data too difficult to understand if it's not for their target level. So all of these different entry points into corpus data, by providing these multiple options, we can tackle different research questions, we can tackle different learning problems, and lots of opportunities for clever teachers to develop meaningful activities consulting corpus for a wide range of different learning goals. As we know, however, and is even kind of particularly more prominent given that we now live in the age of generative AI, example, ChatGPT or Microsoft Bing, which seems to be incredibly popular at the moment. We know that DDL studies, despite their popularity in the research literature, to really find mainstream acceptance outside of university level. So there's a lot of a great need for more DDL studies with learners other than tertiary students, especially for languages other than English. I think the PowerPoint's supposed to say, but there are some other main issues as well, which we'll cover again in a moment. The purpose of my talk today is to have a look at one of those studies that I conducted with pre-tertiary and then talk about how I made a new Corpus platform that was based on the concerns that were shared by those particular group of students. So in terms of barriers to implementing DDL in the primary and secondary classroom, there are lots of issues, lots of reasons why it's difficult to do. Three of the main ones that I'll point out are shown here on the slide. First of all, that almost all of the existing corpus data itself is produced by adults for adults, and therefore may not be appropriate for younger learners. And the corpus data may be produced at a very high level of proficiency in terms of its academic register or the amount of vocabulary knowledge needed to be able to comprehend some of the concordance lines that you will be exposed to. So that means that the corpus data needs significant modification if it is going usable by learners below the university level. Not only that, but the vast majority of corpus tools out there were designed for adults, and therefore the user interfaces and the way that younger learners are typically used to finding information through computers or online is not really in tandem with the user interfaces of most of the modern big corpus platforms, for example, Sketch Engine, probably COCA, the BYU, BNC suite, Lanxbox, for example, all amazing tools, not particularly user-friendly for your average, say, lower secondary school student. And then, of course, pre and in-service teacher trainees have very little in the way of corpus literacy. This is a problem that is being tackled quite significantly in the research literature at the moment. There are a number of studies within the last 2 or 3 years that are looking at corpus literacy in teacher training programs. In Indonesia, I'm running one at the moment in Vietnam. There's studies from the Middle East, there's studies in Europe. There's a lot of research activity on this topic at the moment. Hong Kong as well is another really great site for this kind of research. So work is being done, but probably not at the scale that we would like to see at present. Younger learners, particularly the upper primary level, where exposure to corpus data might be advisable in certain cases, you have to remember that these learners are developing their first language literacy skills as well. That's why exposure to so-called authentic corpus data, the type you might get in, say, the British National Corpus or the COCA corpus, is really problematic to use with such students. And I've rejected a number of papers that I get for review that try to do corpus studies with younger learners, and they say, oh, the corpus data used was COCA. And I'm just like, why? That doesn't make any sense at all. We really need to use corpora that is suitable for not just the proficiency level of the learners, but also their sensibilities and their understanding of concepts that may be too difficult for them to acquire within the data. So that's something that I just want to mention briefly there. DDL researchers like myself, I've been out to so many schools. I've done so many online presentations with pre and in-service teacher trainees all around the world. And despite the successes that are reported in the research literature, despite the positive perceptions and attitudes that get published about trainees and corpus data, you generally find that when the training is over, the perception is that, yes, Corpora, DDL are fantastic, but I'm not going to go ahead and use them in my own classroom practice. And there are a number of reasons for that. The level of technical proficiency required to operate the tool can be too much. User interfaces, as I already mentioned, are too difficult. And especially now we have generative AI tools like ChatGPT. We need to do a lot of work to emphasize the strength that corporates still have over generative AI. And I have just completed and submitted a paper to the journal Applied Corpus Linguistics that deals with that topic. And hopefully that should be accepted for publication soon. So the main issues noted by trainees in all of the research, when you look at all of the DDL studies published recently, they always talk about how difficult the Corpora user interfaces are to use, including, and I use BYU or the English Corporate.org suite as an example, because that tool accounts for up to 31% of all DDL published research as of 2019. That's according to a kind of review study by Alex Bolton and Nina Vatkina that came out 2 years ago. And when researchers like myself are going into teach training contexts and using tools like that and expecting teachers and young people to be able to understand and use those tools, is just not really going to work. And even tools that have tried to simplify their user interface, for example, Sketch Engine, haven't really done a very good job of making people understand what all of the different buttons do, what the different images are, and what they mean. Like, what do I need to click on? I have to click on something like 6 times to get to what I want. And it's just mad. It makes you insane. You don't want to deal with it. So yeah, that's why so many people give up very quickly. Case in point, 2 years ago now, I did a kind of longitudinal study with a group of secondary school children here in Australia. I did like a DDL workshop with all of the teachers in the school through a master's student who worked there, who was in our master's program. I gave a demonstration about what Corpora could do, and then the science teachers approached me at the end of the workshop, and they said, okay, well, we've got a lot of students who are writing science research reports as part of their examination preparation, because as part of their exam, they had to write a research report based on an experiment that they had done in class. So they do the experiment in class, they then have to write a research report. And the teachers pointed out that the students were very good at writing the report, but they really struggled with the use of the passive voice construction. Passive voice construction is very frequent in research report writing, particularly in the methodology section, where almost every sentence or every multi-clause sentences can have like 2 or 3 passive voice constructions in them. So like the canister was placed on the desk, the liquid was poured into the canister was shaken, the mixture was poured, right? All of these are passive voice constructions in explaining the procedure and the methodology. So even with first language users, they were still getting this wrong quite frequently. And this is something that the teachers felt that Corpora could really help with. So the results of the study are published in a paper that came out in Computer Assisted Language Learning last year. And to summarize, we had 40 students taking physical science elective courses for 2 terms, and we gave them DDL training in the form of some modules that were placed into my online course on data-driven learning that I'm going to very briefly show you here. And I'm just going to copy the link into the chat as well, just because anyone can take this course. It's a course that takes about between 7 to 8 hours to complete. You can sign up absolutely free. And when you finish, you'll get a certificate of completion from the university for completing the course. And elements of this course are used in my academic writing programs that I run here at UQ, and it's also being used as an assessment at the University of Sydney as well. So I kept in most of the course is designed for university level students who want to use corporate to improve academic writing. But I also embedded, and you can still see these here, the activities that I use with the high school girls to get them to understand passive voice constructions using some popular tools. So there's kind of 5 modules here of activities that the students did. Basically, the way that it would work is they would get like a worked example of how something worked. This one is looking at you doing collocations in the Scale Corpus query platform using the word sketch option. They would then do that worked example, and then there would be they would have to repeat that and do a task and add in their answers here into a multiple choice quiz. At the end of each module, then they would then reflect on what they did, and this went on for about 1 term of training, using a range of tools, including Sketch Engine, Scale, and Lingle. Those are the 3 main tools that we used with this project. There was a lot of experimental stuff going on as well, which again, I don't have time to describe today, but if you want to read the paper, just Google that one, and you can see that generally everything was successful during the study. The students learned how to use passive voice much better. The learning gains were pretty good. Perceptions were all positive and so on. But, and here's the but. 3 months after the training was finished, I then did a follow-up survey to the students. 18 students from the 40 responded. Of these, only 4 were still using Corpus tools. Not very much. So only 4 out of 40 then is actually 10% of the total student population that was still using Corpus tools. And the reasons why are shown here in the figure. I don't know how to use the tool properly. I prefer Google. I don't understand the results I get. The tool doesn't do what I need it to do. Pretty common, and unfortunately, this is also what you find in most, and not most, but a lot of published research that does follow-up studies in DDL. So after the training is done, the continued use is not great. Again, you can go into the paper to look at the interview data and understand exactly why they didn't want it. But to summarize, the younger learners prefer the simplest and fastest tools available. They don't like tools that are too complex. They don't like tools that are too slow. They like to make comparisons of different query results, but they don't want to do this with clicking through like 5 or 6 different things to get what you want. They want to click something once and see the answers at once. They prefer a range of concordance and statistical information, but they also did find the discipline specificity of Corpus query platforms like Sketch Engine very useful as well. So while Corpus use was useful in improving their knowledge and use of the passive voice, what we really need to get these students to continue to use corporate in the future, that unfortunately the tools we're using aren't doing the job, so we have to make a new one. And this is where the new tool comes in, and this tool was developed by myself, and the other person you can see here on the left is Dr. Peter Crosthwaite, who was one of the main creators of the Scale platform. He also worked with the Sketch Engine team. So he's got a lot of experience in developing Corpus tools. He also helped develop the tool Versatext, which is used by James Thomas, which a lot of people are also using in DDL studies. So he's got a lot of experience in producing this kind of thing. So I'm just going to go through then and give you a demonstration of the main functions of the tool. But just to get here on the basics, it's a web-based Corpus query application. It's designed to be as simple as possible. It's also keeps privacy. It doesn't collect any data from its users. It doesn't require a login or any user account or anything like that. It's based on the open source version of Sketch Engine with a Python wrapper. It's fast. It's minimalistic. It can handle thousands of queries an hour, and it can be, the current version is now hosted on the University of Queensland website, which should give it pretty fast access. I'll now go into the platform itself. And to begin with, this is the entry point into the platform. And I've just also copied the link into the chat for those of you who want to see that. And essentially, it looks very much like Google, not particularly difficult. I've just got a few options here. Information on the different kinds of searches that are possible is found here. And everything's set up for you, nice and easy. So we'll just go into the basic concordances first. I'll just choose a word at random that I know that is well in the corpus. And what you will see here are concordances taken from the data. And I'll talk a little bit more about how these concordances work in terms of the difference between this and other tools in a moment. Before I do that, I need to explain about the corpus itself. It's compiled from a number of freely available, publicly existing corpora that are suitable for use with kind of lower tertiary, upper level secondary students. This includes the British Academic Written English Corpus, or also called the BOR corpus, a corpus composed of transcriptions of TED Talks based on predefined topics, a data set taken from simple English Wikipedia, which is basically the same as normal Wikipedia, but the articles are written specifically to be as simple as possible. They use simple language. They use less complex vocabulary and grammatical structures. So it's designed to be much more readable, much more friendly to secondary school level users. Transcriptions of learning videos also taken from the BBC Teach website, and then two larger corpora, the Elsevier OACC by BY corpus, which is primarily a science corpus taken from Elsevier's journals, and then the British National Corpus 2014 spoken version. So this then breaks down into a 50 million word corpus over 50,000 documents. We then began a process of tagging each of the files for the specific topics in which they were concerned using some natural language processing methods. And an individual document could be tagged under more than one topic as well. You can see here the breakdown: culture, arts, and music with the highest number of tokens, but we also have, say, biology, history, politics, physics, education, psychology, mathematics. So a lot of the main subject areas that are used in secondary education and some of those that are used in early tertiary studies as well. Yes, the token counts are not the same across the different data sets. That's something that's very difficult to do given the data that's available. But when you're querying by discipline or topic, as I'll show you later on, a normalized approach is used. which means that you're getting good information about which words are used more or less in some disciplines. And again, I'll show you that in a moment. We also, of course, then have corpora that are divided up into written and spoken corpora for students and teachers who are interested in exploring the difference between the two registers. So let me go back into the concordances here. And this is what's called the keyword in context view, or quick, as it's often called. And of course, we have the option to switch to sentence mode as well, where whole sentences are displayed. What is different about our quick view, or what we call pattern mode, is that we follow the latest version of Lawrence Anthony's ANCONC program in automatically sorting the concordance lines, not by alphabetical order, but in terms of the frequency of the 4-word combination that appears to the right of the query term. So this is also color-coded in order to make that combination more salient for language learners and teachers. What this means in reality is that the impact of is the most frequent 4-word combination in our corpus that appears with the target term assess. The second line, assess the effect of, is the second most frequent for gram. Assess the quality of is the third most frequent, and so on. Now, if I want to see the results in terms of that 4-word combination, assess the impact of, I can move over here and click this button, this little down arrow, which then gives me those results, and only those results. And then I can click back up to get back to where I was. The reason why we hide in that way is because of very frequent combinations. You can see that it takes up quite a lot of the screen, and you have to scroll down quite a lot in order to get to the second most frequent term. And we found that language students and their teachers don't like to scroll down too much. They just like to see the important information at first glance without scrolling down pages and pages of information to get to the second most frequent construction. So again, here, assess the effect of, click here, the down arrow, and that's going to give me those results as well. Going back to sentence mode, another innovation for CorpusMate is that often we are kind of criticized in a way that concordances or sentences taken from corpora do not have enough context to allow language learners to really understand how a word is used. So what we've done here is, with our expand button, is given people the option to add more context to a given result by clicking expand. And this can be done up to 6 times, as you can see. So we now have much more information and context around that term that I didn't have before. And this is something that I think is kind of unique to this Corpus platform, and is an advantage over other Corpus platforms that are available at the moment. Another important innovation with the concordancing in this platform is that, unlike generative AI, for example, we know exactly where the data came from because we have access to all of those original texts. Something that our students particularly asked for was the ability to generate a citation so that if they use one of the sentences from the corpus data in their own writing, they will be able to cite and reference that. So what we built in here is the ability to click on any term, and it will give you the title of the text in which it was taken, the source, in which case this corpus, the topics under which it appeared, and then I have the ability to get the citation for this paper from Google Scholar just by clicking on it. And here I'm taken to the paper, which I can then cite. And younger university students, even graduate students and other professors who are using the tool found this function very useful. An additional function will translate the original term here, assess, at the click of a button. By default, it is set to Mandarin Chinese, but it can very quickly be changed to any language that you might be using. So again, just providing as much information around the concordance as is possible. I can then also very quickly copy these results to the clipboard if that's something that I want to do. Then I might go into Excel and copy and paste the results in that I have, if that's something that is going to help the teacher. Or I can do this with the sentences, which is probably a bit more useful. And now I have all of those sentences with the term copied and pasted straight into Excel. So now I can use these in my teaching materials. Another function that was also built into VersaText is the ability to hide the target term for teachers who want to create gap fill activities. This again can then be copied to the clipboard. This time I'm going to try in Word. Have the ability there to generate items straight from the corpus data. So these are the various concordance options. And again, most of these were requested by our younger learners that we were working with. And we also have to thank Lawrence Anthony for his recent innovation in organizing by frequency rather than alphabetical order, which is a real game changer when it comes to concordancing for data-driven learning. Now, in terms of the search options that CorpusMate allows, we've kept it simple. So no part of speech terms, no corpus query language. For people who want those things, we recommend them go to other tools. Sketch Engine, for example, where these functions are available. We have basic wildcards done by star. As you can see. And then using the compare results function, this brings up a normalized percentage view together with the raw frequency count in the corpus and a visual representation of the likelihood of that word going into the wildcard slot. And then these are clickable, which will then take you to the relevant concordances, which again, I could check these and see the different combinations that occur in them and put them into sentence mode, whatever it is here that I need to do. Aside from the star, we also have the slash. This will give you options. For example, here, is it the or is it a? Adding the slash will bring up the results for both. I can then compare results again and see at a glance which word may be more likely to occur in that slot and be taken to the various collocations that appear with that search. A final operator is the question mark, which will tell you if a word is necessary or not. One of the favorite errors that my students make over the years is the use of the verb emphasize with the preposition on, so to emphasize on something. But do I need to only emphasize, or do I emphasize on something? Is this word necessary or not? So by adding the question mark, I can bring up results for both and use compare results and see that emphasize on really doesn't appear very much in the corpus, and therefore I'd probably be much safer not using that preposition. So just 3 basic options there. I also forgot to mention that aside from viewing these collocations in this manner, you can also click on the pattern finder function here, and it will give you that same information, but this time in a neat table together with a frequency count of the number of times that that combination appears in the corpus. And then all of these are, of course, clickable. Finally, what we want to do is to think about searches by topic. These can be gained by using the drop-down menu. This will filter the query to searches within only that data set, or comparing written and spoken language through the use of the mode function. I can also use the distribution by topic function here, and it will take me to a visual representation of which disciplines that term is more likely and less likely to appear in. For example, the term funnel appears quite frequently within chemistry, psychology, geography, agriculture and environment, and culture, arts and music, but it is unlikely to appear in maths, education, or science. So the blue bars represent a higher than the mean use within that discipline, and the red bars represent a lower than average use across all the disciplines. And we can also get a quick breakdown as to the normalized distribution in written and spoken corpora. So let's go back now to our PowerPoint just to finish off. In terms of the platform, as mentioned, it's pretty new, and we're currently using this with language teacher trainees in Vietnam. The data for that has already been collected in terms of how they were able to use CorpusMate and other Corpus tools into their lesson planning activities. So do look out for that paper on assessing corpus literacy to come out towards the end of the year in the journal TESOL Quarterly. In conclusion, with CorpusMate, we've attempted to provide language learners and teachers with a simple, free, fast, and effective corpus-based disciplinary language learning resource. We know that in the ChatGPT era, we face significant challenges as corpus linguists trying to do data-driven learning. However, CorpusMate offers advantages over generative AI, including clarity about the data sources, the authenticity, replicability, multimodality of CorpusMate's findings, the safety aspect for younger learners or those in conservative teaching contexts. This is because, and I forgot to mention this, that all of the corpus data that we included in CorpusMate was pre-prepared using a Python-based profanity filter, which removes all of the swear words and references to sexual language, drugs, and so on, meaning that the corpus data is safe for use with younger children and for those working in more conservative language teaching contexts. Not only that, but using corpus data and analyzing it and querying it is a very active approach, actively engaging language data, unlike ChatGPT, where you simply type in what you want and you get what you're given, which is considered to be much more passive. To conclude, I do invite the audience here today for the Malaysian Corpus Research Network to trial the tool, have a go, check it out, see how you get on. If you plan to use it with your students, or if you're a teacher trainer looking to use it with your trainees, send me an email, maybe we can work together, and I'd love to hear about how you got on. Just as a final slide, I should also show you here, and I'll copy and paste the link here into the chat, but we released towards the beginning of the year a teaching resource, an open source book called Using Language Data to Learn About Language. And this book was prepared by myself and language teacher trainees and trainers in the Brazilian context. The book is free to read, and it contains 16 ready-made DDL lesson plans, both in hands-on format with the learners using Corpus themselves, or in hands-off format for contexts where students don't have access to the internet or don't have their own devices to use, so the teacher then controls the lesson. There are lessons for students of different proficiency levels, from younger learners up to adults on a range of different linguistic features. So do have also at this book, if it's interested and you want some ideas for how you can make full, complete lesson plans for data-driven learning, do check out this book. All of the development, what you need to do, including the different timings and so on, all of the different instructions are provided. There are videos accompanying each lesson plan that explain about the tools that you're going to use and the different things you need to do. And there are even spaces within the book to carry out the actual activities together in class, entering the answers into the space, go through these with your students together, or modify them for your own teaching and learning purposes. So that's just a little value add there for the people in attendance today. But for now, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, and I'd like to invite the audience for some questions. Thank you very much.
So, you can
I'm sorry, your audio is cutting out there, Anise. I can't hear what you're saying. No, you must have a loose connection with your microphone. Maybe Raihana can take over.
Okay, so thank you very much to our speaker, Dr. Peter Crosthwaite, for the very intriguing presentation. I would say that it's very comprehensive, such that we don't really have excuse not to use DDL and Corpus in, especially for language educators. So I now open the floor to questions from the audience, and I think one has already come in from
Yeah, there's
Abdullah
a question from Abdullah. So it's a question about NLP, natural language processing. Is it used? I mean, it's completely unrelated to my talk, but the answer is, yeah, it's great. But it's a huge area, right? I mean, one thing that I suppose it's probably best just to give you a resource that we use here at our university, which is a great introduction to NLP using the R environment. And it's a shout out to my colleague, Dr. Martin Schweinberger, who is doing wonderful things in this space. And it is the LADAL initiative. What this initiative is called the Language Technology and Data Analysis Laboratory, and it's run by the Australian Text Analytic Platform and the Australian Research Data Commons. And what this does is it provides a range of tutorials on R-based natural language processing applications, including data visualization, statistical analysis, text analytics, and so on. And they're also within the resources building in Jupyter notebooks that allow you to upload your own data and then have that data you can use these natural language processing applications on your own data to get the things that it is that you need to do. So things like sentiment analysis, you already mentioned, like all of those different kinds of applications are found here. So concordancing, sentiment analysis, topic modeling, tagging and parsing, and so on. And all of these they have the interactive versions of the tutorial. They have the R notebooks for the tutorials that can be downloaded. So go ahead and check this out if that's something that you want to learn. I have to say, I had nothing to do with this. This is my colleague's work, but it's a really great initiative, and I hope that you find that very useful. Yeah, I think there's no other questions in the chat. Oh, no, wait, I've just got one from Alex. So for first timers looking to implement DDL in classrooms, would you recommend using CorpusMate as a supplementary tool or developing a totally new module? So I think that there's a number of things, like you can introduce the tool, but you can't just give them the tool and then say, here's the tool, now go ahead and do stuff. You really have to introduce the concept of what consulting a corpus does, what it is, what it can do, what it doesn't do. So think about the use case first. Do I want to learn about collocations? Do I want to learn about disciplinary vocabulary? Do I want to learn about X, Y, Z? Then the second question is, can I do those things using other non-corpus tools? And then if you can, I mean, why would you then go ahead maybe and use a corpus tool to do it? Like, so can I do it in ChatGPT? If I can, probably don't need the corpus then, right? But then if there are certain things that corpora do very well, and that if you can train your students in those use cases, then they will turn to them and continue to use them once they realize the value that they can bring. And then for teachers, as I said, it's about how to integrate corpus activities within a meaningful lesson. So what we don't want to see is the whole lesson, students just consulting corpora. When you see the book that with the link that I shared there, you see that there's an introduction, they talk about the language, maybe there's some games first, then they maybe introduce the grammar point, or they introduce the vocabulary point, maybe they talk about that amongst themselves. Maybe that's the point then when the corpus activity comes in. ask them to check about which words appear with those words, how those words are used in context. Can they get some examples of their own from the corpus? Can they take a corpus example and rewrite that using different vocabulary and so on? And then they reflect on that and then go back. Maybe there's some consolidation activity. Maybe they do a song, maybe they do a puzzle, but the corpus activity is just there within, and it fits nicely within the overall lesson plan, and it helps meet the lesson objectives in a way that is not interrupting all of the other things that are happening. So there's a number of things that have to be done for it to work. But this is the case with computer-assisted language learning in general. No matter what kind of technology you're using, you have to integrate it into the overall plan and structure and do that in a way that is clear and that is actually helpful. So I hope that answers your question, Alex. And then Christine, is the access to the system or website free? Yeah, absolutely everything is free. That's the training course that I showed you, the Improving Writing Through Corpus course, that's free. CorpusMate's free, the book is free, Ladal is free, we do it, so you don't have to.
Okay. All right, thank you very much, Dr. Crosthwaite again.
Thanks.
Would there be other questions before we proceed with the next speaker? No. Okay. All right. So
right.
Anis, would you like to check your
And so
connection
just before we do that, I'm just gonna say I have to leave the room because I'm not feeling very well, so I'm gonna leave. Lucas, it's great to see you. Have a great talk.
Here, can we take a
Thank you
group
so
photo
much, yeah.
first? Perhaps we
Yeah,
can-
please take a photo first, and then I'll have to go. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Right. For the participants, maybe you can switch on your camera so that we can take a group photo together with Dr. Peter Crosthwaite.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much for agreeing to be the speaker.
No, it's my pleasure. I'm sorry, I could barely talk. I've got like this chest infection going on, so I'm not feeling very well. But yeah, thanks for everything. And again, if you want the PowerPoint slides or anything, just send me an email and I'll send everything across to you.
All right. Okay. Now we're going to take the photo. Right.
Thanks.
3, 2, 1, smile. All right.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Lucas, but yeah, I better go. But now I'll hand over to the wonderful Lucas.
Okay, thank you. Take care.
Thank you. See you again.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.